Quantum warfare, heaven below arrives. Resolution of conflict through identification and non-contention, by Michael Corbett Hawkins. Chapter 5. Model of Reality. Beyond all ideas of right and wrongdoing, there is a field. I will meet you there. Rumi. I believe it appropriate at this time to speak of the model of reality with which I approach and base the concept of quantum warfare. This is simply a model, for ultimately I must acknowledge the mystery that is the true nature of reality, and while the duality of good and evil can be seen all about us, the question of what to do about evil must be answered, if mankind is to continue. For whatever nation we may speak of, their individual wrestling and experiments of government have but one goal, acknowledged or not: the preservation of the species, as well as the ecosystem of which we are inseparably one with. To this end, I have submitted these insights for examination and confirmation by others in their daily experience. Evil, in the individual and collective sense, is relative. Each individual has a sense of good and evil that their culture or parents have inculcated, or has been learned through personal experience, and the tendency is to lay these perceptions of the duality of good and evil upon others as they either conform to or attempt to negate these preconceived notions. These notions may tend to block any peaceful resolution that may be arrived at, even though peace may be truly craved. So this leaves us at a loss to know how to find our way out of any conflict that confronts us. It leaves us unwilling to take a step back from the confrontation. That unwillingness is based on the presupposition that to do so is to betray those principles we believe to be good, and to give in to, or surrender to what we perceive as evil. This model is a way of eliminating these blocks to peaceful coexistence with our fellow man. My heart goes out to whoever finds it difficult to negotiate the philosophical gymnastics to accomplish this, for ultimately, it is the abandoning of this duality of good-evil that enables one to do what is necessary to resolve the conflicts in which they find themselves. This model begins by seeing the foundation of reality as being a quantum field of infinite probabilities. Each of these probabilities within this field are both true and not true, simultaneously. This is caused by a cancellation of probabilities, since they contradict one another, to the point of their negation. Nonetheless, the probabilities continue to exist as probabilities, although not manifested, due to their negation. In the Tao Te Ching, there is the question: what is the difference between good and evil? This is not a moral question. It is best to see the question in terms of mathematics, as in, what is the difference between 7 and 3? The answer of course would be 4, or as it would commonly be written, 7 minus 3 equals 4. If we think of good and evil in their duality, as good and not good, and give a binary value to this of good equals 1 and not good equals 0, then we have the binary relationship of 1 and 0. But, as this book is called Quantum Warfare, and we are talking about the quantum field that contains an infinite amount of probabilities, then we must move this binary relationship, that of 1 and 0, into the quantum domain. Those who are involved with computer programming will recognize 1 and 0 as the basis of computer language, which I understand has its origins in Taoist thought. Each bit in computing has a value of either 1 or 0, on or off, true or not true. But, in the emerging field of quantum computing, there is one other possibility, that of the quantum bit, or the qubit. A qubit is a bit where both the values of 1 and 0 are both true, or both are present. Now, in terms of good and evil, one of the difficulties that people encounter in this duality is that what one person calls good, another may call evil. So, what one person calls a 1, another person may call that a 0, or perhaps in a more moral sense, that in which one person finds value, another person finds valueless, and vice versa. So, each person is calling good, evil, from the other person's perspective. When one steps away from the duality, or abandons it, they are free to give both an equal but opposite value. We may call one concept of good plus 1, and what we would have called 0, we can then call it minus 1. This frees a person to do something else with that 0. So, in the quantum field, both this plus 1 and minus 1 have cancelled one another through contradiction. This is the field out of which all that exists flows. Some may find it easier to call the quantum field God. Within this God is an infinite amount of probabilities, both for what someone would call good and what they would call evil. Even within the Judeo-Christian scripture, we have an answer for who creates evil, and it may surprise you. I form the light, and create darkness. I make peace, and create evil. I the Lord do all these things. Isaiah 45:7. So, even from that point of view, good and evil are created by the same source. This puts the Judeo-Christian view of the source of good and evil on the same page as many other religions and philosophies on the subject of the source of evil. There is one source that contains the probabilities of both what someone might call good as well as evil. But how, one might ask, can both probabilities be contained in the same source? As I have spoken of before, both probabilities exist and don't exist simultaneously at the quantum level of the source, and since these probabilities have cancelled each other, it can be truly said that God both exists and doesn't exist, thus making the theist and the atheist both correct. It is for this reason the source of all things cannot be seen. It is interesting that the Tao Te Ching says that it seems to exist. You might remember that we freed up the 0. What is left after the cancellation of the plus 1 and the minus 1 is 0, and the plus 1 and the minus 1. Two different sets of good and evil are beliefs. Each belief is a quantum attractor field, which is a subset of the whole of the quantum field, also known in science as the 0-point field. We now return to the question from the Tao Te Ching. What is the difference between good and evil? We converted good and evil to the values of plus 1 and minus 1, and the answer to the question is 0. I have already said that these values of plus 1 and minus 1 are beliefs, which represent quantum attractor fields, which are subsets of the quantum field, and that whole quantum field is 0. So how do we view that 0? With what language do we speak of it? Let's look at it in the context of our question from the Tao again. What is the difference between good and evil? Answer: I don't know, or 0. I don't know is the absence of belief. It is the entrance into the quantum field, the cancellation of all probabilities, the original state of all that exists. It is the qubit of the quantum computer that is your mind, where all probabilities, read values, are both true and not true simultaneously. And what do we call this state? It is a mystery. Let's look at the first verse of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The Tao is both named and nameless. As nameless, it is the origin of all things. As named, it is the mother of 10,000 things. Ever desireless, one can see the mystery. Ever desiring, one sees only the manifestations, and the mystery itself is the doorway to all understanding. The good, the bad, and the Tao. A truly good man is not aware of his goodness, and is therefore good. A foolish man tries to be good, and is therefore not good. A master does nothing, yet he leaves nothing undone. The ordinary man is always doing things, yet many more are left to be done. The highest virtue is to act without a sense of self. The highest kindness is to give without condition. The highest justice is to see without preference. When the Tao is lost, there is goodness. When goodness is lost, there is morality. When morality is lost, there is ritual. Ritual is the husk of true faith, the beginning of chaos. Tao Te Ching. As we see, in this partial verse of the Tao Te Ching, the Tao is in some way higher than the state of goodness. How can that be? How can something be higher than goodness? And if this higher state than goodness is possible, how might it be achieved? The Tao, the quantum field, the 0-point field, spirit, God, these all are an identity. Goodness, there is a lot to be said for goodness, and as the Tao Te Ching points out, if the Tao cannot be achieved, goodness is preferable to the other option, bad or evil. But as we can see from the quote above, it is impossible for someone to be good while trying to obtain goodness. It's said to be foolish to attempt to do so. Even in the Judeo-Christian worldview, St. Paul described this dilemma. The Tao Te Ching explains that a truly good man is not aware of his goodness. He is ignorant of his goodness. Ignorance is a powerful thing. Knowing ignorance is strength. Ignoring knowledge is sickness. Only when we are sick of our sickness shall we cease to be sick. The sage is not sick, but is sick of sickness. This is the secret of health. Tao Te Ching, verse 71. Or, as I have reworded the principle of this verse, as an affirmation, I am ignoring knowledge, that I am ignoring knowledge, that I may cease to ignore knowledge. Right this moment, your body has 50 to 75 trillion cells, and each and every one is in constant communication with every one of those trillions of cells. Right this moment, your heart is beating, and has been from the moment it was formed in your mother's womb. When was it that you were trained to do all this, orchestrated, synchronized to the nanosecond operation of your body? You are doing it, but how do you know how to do it? You are completely ignorant as to how to do it, yet you are doing it. We believe that thinking and higher reason are the most powerful, most developed human trait. Yet the quantum physicist David Bohm, who unwittingly wrote the final calculations that made the atomic bomb possible, said this: "What is the source of all this trouble? I am saying that the source is basically in thought." Many people would think that such a statement is crazy, because thought is the one thing we have with which to solve our problems. That's part of our tradition. Yet it looks as if the thing we use to solve our problems with is the source of our problems. It's like going to the doctor and having him make you ill. In fact, in 20% of medical cases, we do apparently have that going on. But in the case of thought, it's far over 20%. The general tacit assumption in thought is that it's just telling you the way things are, and that it's not doing anything, that you are inside there deciding what to do with the information. But you don't decide what to do with the information. Thought runs you. Thought, however, gives false information that you are running it, that you are the one who controls thought, whereas actually, thought is the one which controls each one of us. Thought is creating divisions out of itself, and then saying that they are there naturally. This is another major feature of thought. Thought doesn't know it is doing something, and then it struggles against what it is doing. It doesn't want to know that it is doing it, and thought struggles against the results, trying to avoid those unpleasant results, while keeping on with that way of thinking. That is what I call sustained incoherence. Yet, the trillions of cells in our bodies are functioning completely well, without your thinking about it, without there being an apparent boss. If such a boss did exist, As Alan Watts put it, they would be suffering from intellectual elephantiasis on a vast scale. So, I submit to you that the greatest form of intelligence is that which does things perfectly well, but without knowing how they are done. You, right this moment, are an example of such an intelligence. That is an example of the Tao. It is also part of Eastern thought that you don't just have the little body you have been going around in since you were born, but that everything outside of you is also your body. If we took the thing that you call your body, the thing with 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, and placed it into a vacuum, what would be the result? Of course you would die. That is because you are just as dependent on the outside world for your existence as you are on your individual body. What I am leading you to is an understanding that the same intelligence that is operating your body, without knowing how to do it, can also function likewise in the outside world. This is so because it is operating in every living being, and if the Gaia principle is correct, that would include the organic living entity that is the entire planet. Back to good and evil. When someone has the belief that a certain form of action is good, on the quantum level occurs what is called simultaneous co-arising. What is arising simultaneously? It is the arising of the probabilities of good's opposite, evil, and then the person who believes in good behavior begins to struggle against those probabilities of evil behavior. The person starts to be in a vicious cycle, trying to be good, which causes the arising of the probabilities of evil within themselves. Herein is the quantum mechanics behind the televangelist who preaches righteousness, but falls into sin. The more they struggle against those probabilities of evil within themselves, by trying to be good, the more they come to understand what a hopeless battle they are fighting, rather than observing these less than preferable potentialities, and affirming, "I'm not aware of my goodness." They wrestle with them, resist them, they believe that they must be good, and try to be so. As Lao Tse in the Tao Te Ching says, that's a fool's errand. But a more powerful affirmation would be, I don't know if I'm aware of my goodness or not, and if I am, I accept that. This is a format, a template of affirmation that will have many applications to many arenas of your life. What this affirmation is doing is returning your beliefs to the quantum field, to the source where all probabilities have cancelled one another. You are ceasing to define yourself by having the belief that you are good or not. You are becoming a mystery to yourself. You are the mystery. And by affirming that, before it comes to the point where you find that you are aware of your goodness, you accept that probability. What that does is that it puts you into the extremely powerful positive quantum attractor field of acceptance, while rising out of the powerlessness of the low power negative attractor field of fear of doing that which you'd rather not do, and then that mystery, which is with great precision and intent, orchestrating your body. You are allowing that mystery to manifest itself as it sees fit, according to its intention, as it is able to, without knowing how. You will know the freedom of your actions, without forcing yourself to do something because of the belief that it is good. You will act without thinking ahead what is your reward for the action, or its punishment, and you will be acting according to the intelligence that is causing all the orchestrated harmony within your body.